One quick note and quick tip here. When I was working in the node editor down here in the shader editor, I was having to constantly search for color ramps and, press A, shift, RGB color, and looking for all these took time. So what I eventually did was, if you press shift A, and then that's, for example, if I go to material, let's say I want to use, glossy material. If you right click, here it says remove from quick favorites, but I already put it in my quick favorites. So instead of having to constantly search for things, I would just literally press Q, and here's my list of nodes. So, oh, I needed a noise texture. Boom, there's my noise texture, right? Oh, I need a gradient map. Okay, where's my gradient? Oh, boom, there's my gradient map. I've been using, it took day 29 for me to realize this, because but this was a big time saver, putting my most used nodes right here on the quick favorites. And I can just bring them up like, boom, one button, there it is, they're ready there. I'm always doing a box projection, it's just fantastic. So again, just go into your menu, find the node that you use a lot, and then literally just right click on it, add it to quicks. That saves a lot of time. Quick word from our sponsor. This sponsor is Audiio. In my last live stream, a lot of people were asking me where I get my music from. I get music from Audiio. Now, Audiio just released this new Audiio Originals only. So these artists were only going to be found on Audiio, which I'm really enjoying some of these tracks here, because again, it's something that's only exclusive to Audiio. So definitely something you want to check this out. I also have a link where I'll be able to help you save 70% off your first year subscription. We pay once a year and then you're done. And what's really nice, we got some sound effects also here. When you guys know I do all my live tracking and VFX stuff, a lot of times those do not have sound effects, so I have to find some sound effects, and this is the bulk of where I get most of my sound effects from. I swear, I don't know how much stuff I find in here that helps me to just get to add some type of sound design to a lot of the tracks that I do. Super fantastic. I'll have the link down below. I'll help you save 70% off your first year subscription. Again, take a look down below. Enough of the jibber jabber. Day 29 of my 30-day challenge. And this day, I'm gonna actually share this Cheeto that I made here, this Cheez-It. It was actually fantastic. It was super hard. I learned it from another guy called NewPlastic, and I'll bring up his channel here to show you. But he does work in Cinema 4 Octane and Cinema 4D Octane. Of course, I like to follow some of the steps he do and reverse engineer them into Blender Octane. Well, this one was quite a challenge. And again, you can use some more further tweaking on this, but this is all procedural, no image maps, and it was actually really, really cool. So I'm gonna walk you guys through the file on this really quickly. First thing first, for the last 29 days, I still got one day left, the last one here. I've been following Winbo, his modeling challenge, and it was I've learned so much stuff from these 30-day challenges. It's absolutely fantastic. The whole thing during this 30-day, I was doing everything in Blender Octane. Here's the 30-day challenge that I've been doing. This has been my motivation. In day 29, we made these kind of like twisty tie, like twisty curly things, and I instantly thought of like a Cheez-It or a spicy curly twisted Cheez-It, which I actually used to eat in America. This was the one we made. Now, one thing that I kind of did wrong was this thing is super dense. Like if I was to go back and do this, I wouldn't make it have so much geometry. Again, like I was just taking what I learned from that lesson and immediately take it and convert it into my daily render. And this is way dense, so it was really heavy on the displacement that I ended up using. So quickly showing you guys the node graph here of this material. This is the full node setup. And again, it looks a little bit complicated, but it's really not that complicated. Believe it or not, it all starts with this one material here, this universal material. And I'm using the transmission, which is actually getting some subsurface going on here. And then we're actually using vector displacements, which works with node base, with noise, procedural noise. And I'm using this to displace. And this is where it got a little bit heavy because of the density of the mesh. I was having a tough time to try to, to render this thing out. It took forever. And then again, I'm using another one into the coating surface of the actual chip. And then we're using roughness and a little bit of specular. So that's it. This is the one material. But believe it or not, it really starts back all the way over here with this UV. This is the projection mode, the projection model that we're using. And these here are basically all of the sizing, UV mapping, sizing, or controlling the scale of the maps. Here's a noise texture. I'm using a Perlin noise texture. I had this one noise texture. This noise texture was being, the main thing that really worked is these blue ones here are composite textures. They allow me to add in different textures and composite them into these little mini layers, and then these layers allow me to do blend modes like I do inside of Photoshop. You can see here blend mode, normal, mix, and then overlaid modes, and then alpha operations. But typically we just use basic standard stuff like that I would use in Photoshop. So this noise is coming into this texture and is being normally mapped and into this. And then we got another layer that's happening here, and this one is actually using a little bit of different. It's using exclusion, right? And then here's your color ramp. I'm using this color ramp here to clamp some values. And this UV transform W, I have to look this up. This was the first time I've ever used one of these here. I'm gonna go in the back end of the Blender Octane manual and see exactly what this does. But typically every time I was doing it, I forgot to show you guys the guy where I learned this. I got to give him props first of all. So this is the channel that I've actually learned how to do this. I got to give props where props are due. NewPlastic, here it is, procedural chip, Cheetos, Octane edition. I've been following here for when I used to use Cinema 4D, but you know, I don't have Octane for Cinema 4D, but I have it for Blender. So I've been reverse engineering some of his videos because he likes to do a lot of procedural stuff. Now, the biggest problem is the number values that he uses inside of these noise textures. Like I have all of the noise textures that he has and all of the nodes, but the main difference was like here, for example, he was literally 0.25. For me, it was 25. Like the first time I tried to follow his lesson, I was doing it number for number and I couldn't even see the noise pattern. So I eventually, halfway through the lesson, I went back and I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna focus on what the actual image looks like that he's using and try to mimic it on mine. And I found that my values were way higher and not even close, not even in the same ballpark. Like here, his was 0.23 and mine was 27, right? So that was the biggest problem. So he used this UV transform node, which I think we're literally taking the noise texture out into this in here and making a copy of it, and then using it again to change up the scaling and then putting it inside basically a color ramp, but you know, gradient map, we call them here in Cinema and Octane, we call them a gradient map, but it's basically color ramp, mixing them into these composite layer effects, and then these all get put into this central little zone here. It literally, like these three, I had basically two noise patterns here copied into these UVs to get different variations, and then clamping those down and, you know, with the sliders here. And then this made all of these get pumped into here, and then this gets pumped out into another color ramp, or basically clamping it up here, clamping my values, and then another group of layers that I can use here. So I'm using two more layers, and again, the main layer is being pumped out and into this one, a new layer. So this up here is our second additional layer. So again, we're using another noise texture, which I colored these by green. And it's easy to do that. If you guys don't know, if you press N and you click on any node, you can select tab and then you can change the color there, right? So while I was working, it was like I was getting lost. I'm like, where's my noise? Where's my noise at? So I literally just started color coding things to help me really find them easily. So that noise gets pumped out into another composite layer, and then this composite layer allows us to do blend modes, and it also allows us to add mask. See, we're pumping into the opacity. So what we're doing here is we're taking the noise we made earlier, pumping it into a color ramp and using that as a mask for our new layer that's going on top. So it was super interesting on how we were making this procedural texture go. And then we come down here to this bottom section. We come back here, we got a medium. This is our subsurface, right? Our subsurface comes out of here, and then all these guys down here are just controlling the color of the actual subsurface and the color of the Cheeto. Again, here's our noise texture being pumped into these color ramps, which we're adding the color to that, and we're using this as the color. And then this one here is basically like a mask, and it goes into the amount of a mixed texture here. So look, mixing two textures, and then this is going to be the mask, and then this goes into a color correct, which allows me to have some more, you know, pump up saturations, things like that, and RGB, which is adding another underlayer color into the subsurface, and then that gets all pumped back into the subsurface here. And then this one here was my displacement to displace the whole surface of the actual Cheeto. And again, we were literally just taking a copy of what we did from the beginning, piping it in piping it out of this and into another composite material, and then this gets piped out into our, what is it here, displacement. And then that was pretty much it. And then here on the coating, just another little color ramp to just clamp down some values. And that was the whole setup. And then I think one more thing here at the top, the albedo, the transmission, which is the main color of the actual subsurf, was getting pumped into a color corrector, which we were taking it out of our mixture, and just to give me some more control of pumping up the saturation. And that basically is like the whole setup. That's how I got basically the final output of this Cheeto. And again, like I said, it was very dense on as far as, you know, subsurfacing going and stuff like that. I could have made something a little bit more or less. I'll probably go back and make another, you know, low poly Cheeto and just put this material back on. But it's cool that it's procedural, so you can really control it. You don't have to worry about UV unwrapping and all that stuff. And it worked out really nice, and I'm like super proud of this one here. So I'm gonna break down some more other ones that I had, things that I've learned. I just want to start sharing the knowledge from Blender Octane, and also color coding these nodes really helps you visually to get around and stuff like that. Now, another thing I did know in one of my other videos, I figured out how to save materials, but if I was to save this material, it's gonna like just all these color things and everything I named won't be saved with it, which sucks. Like, I'm realizing that. So again, like if you did not know, I have another video that shows you how to save these materials. Enough of the jibber jabber. Take a look at NewPlastic, take a look at Wynn's channel. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Patrick LeVar, keep rendering. Peace.